What's up everyone, Darcblade here with a first impression review of Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection. Think of this as a sort of before you buy guide rather than an in-depth review, as whilst I was provided a copy kindly by Capcom, given the nature of Monster Hunter games, both the mainline series as well as the story series, there is a lot to participate in, including a very extensive endgame. Also, as this was a review copy provided to me, I have certain restrictions on what I can and cannot show, so consider this a spoiler-free review of whether or not you should maybe check out Monster Hunter Stories 3. Now, Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflections is a turn-based role-playing game. If you played any of the other previous Monster Hunter Stories games, then you would know what to expect here. You are a rider, you raise monsters, and then use them to aid you in battle. If you played any of the turn-based Pokemon games or Final Fantasy games, you may know what to expect here. Now, before we get into this, obviously there is a little bit of a bias coming from myself, being a content creator who has done a lot of Monster Hunter content. So I'm coming into this as a Monster Hunter fan. But this in mind, I'm not blind to what is good, to what is bad, and so I want to bring you an objective point of view for this new title. Now, Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflections is the sequel to the second game. However, you don't have to have played the second game to perfectly understand what is going on in Monster Hunter Stories 3. The story takes place in the kingdom of Azuria, where relations between them and the neighbouring nation, Vermil, have things on edge. During these tensions, a mysterious egg is found, giving birth to Rathalos twins. These are actually Sky-scale Rathalos, which unfortunately is seen as a bad omen for the kingdom of Azuria. We play as the young prince or princess of Azuria, born into this troubled time, but who eventually grows up to become a rider, partnering with one of the Rathalos. The twin, though, is nowhere to be found. Once we come of age, we now are part of the Rangers, a group of riders who help the kingdom of Azuria in multiple ways. Things are not all as glorious as it seems though, as eventually there is political intrigue with tensions between Azuria and Vermil rising again to the brink of war. There is a crystal encroachment, a plague that infects the land, creating feral monsters that can ruin the lands they encroach on. Vermil is currently seeing the worst of this and is one of the key reasons to why they're being so hostile. It's a real Game of Thrones and political intrigue story in all honesty, quite mature for a Monster Hunter game. Eventually though, tensions get so high, the story evolves to the point where it becomes a little bit of a globe-trotting adventure, a coming-of-age story almost for the prince or princess, depending on who you're playing as we try our best to take on the responsibility of a leader and try to solve the crisis that is affecting both nations. Pain, heartbreak, sorrow and loss all spur on this desire to try to resolve things, and the only option presented to us is to look abroad. He's actually quite believable, touching and human. The character of the prince, as well as our companions who we travel with, which are basically our retainers as well as some other tag-alongs, they're all very believable and likeable, to be honest, each with their own unique compelling backstory that you learn about as you go through the game. Discovery and mystery definitely seem to be a part of this game's story, as you're constantly uncovering new things, whether it be for the story or for the gameplay. The pacing of the mainline story is also satisfying, with moments of high-octane action, followed by low moments where you're either able to explore, spend time raising your monsties, or take part in side quests. Regardless though, overall the story has been very enjoyable with some truly touching and human moments, which in my opinion puts the story of Monster Hunter Stories 3 ahead of anything that the mainline Monster Hunter games have to offer in terms of story. This is not to say that the story of the mainline games is bad or anything, I just personally prefer the stories that we get in Monster Hunter Stories, but then again, stories can be very subjective. Now when it comes to the gameplay of Monster Hunter Stories 3, as I mentioned in the intro section, it's a turn-based RPG, where you play as a rider, and you battle alongside various monsters that you raise during your adventure. You as a rider as well is no slouch in combat, as you are able to utilize certain hunting weapons, such as the greatsword, longsword, bow, gun lance, hammer, and hunting horn. Mastering these as well as the different moves that your monster has is key to victory. But you're not alone in this, as certain companions will join you for the majority of your adventure. There are also certain aspects when it comes to the turn-based combat that can feel familiar to Pokemon or other turn-based RPGs, as you have to take into account a monster's elemental weaknesses and strengths. And on top of that, there is another aspect in a rock, paper, scissor or speed, technical and strength moves. Utilizing these can counter the move types that your opponents may be using. So, power beats technical, technical beats speed, and speed beats power. Think of it like red beats green, green beats blue, or blue beats red. Another way of looking at it is fire beats grass, grass beats water, water beats fire. The combat can be a little bit difficult at the start of the game, but once you get into how it works, and especially when you get into splicing the genes and DNA of your monsters, it becomes a little bit more easier to manage. It's surprisingly in-depth and complex. There are a lot of menus to go through as well, as not only do you have to contend with all the moves that your monsters have, as well as your weapons, but your gear that you can equip, items you can use, and more. But when you're not in combat, what else is there to do? Well, there's lots of exploration in Monster Hunter Stories 3. You can use your monsters to explore by climbing walls or flying to certain inaccessible areas. Each monster you use comes with a host of tools at their disposal that they can use to explore. So keep this in mind when you're building a team. Speaking of, you can have teams of up to 6 monsters, switching between them on the fly in combat. As for the monsters we get in Monster Hunter Stories 3, there is a whole host of them, far too many to list, and to be honest, some of them would be considered spoilers. There have been lots shown off in the trailer, with a lot of monsters being added to this game from the newer Monster Hunter games such as World, Iceborne, Rise, Sunbreak, and even Wilds. There are also monsters from the older games that haven't been seen in a while that are making a return with Monster Hunter Stories 3, and I for one am thrilled to see them back. While you are exploring though, the main thing you may want to be doing is looking for eggs. Certain dens appear at different rarities, giving you access to certain monster eggs that you can relocate, shall we say. You can then hatch them and then add them to your collection. And discovering a new egg is one of the highlights of this game. There are also certain aspects in the rite of channeling that allows you to splice the genes and DNA of your monsters. This could be compared to a bingo card basically. And then there's the new habitat restoration. Due to the conflict going on in the story, certain monsters are on the verge of extinction, and you can use this habitat restoration to restore monsters that are almost extinct to certain areas. You can also change the location of certain monsters via this habitat restoration mechanic to give them enhanced stats or even dual elements. It's definitely going to be something that is going to be toyed with a lot towards the end game. And speaking of end game, whilst I haven't touched on the true end game yet, as I've only just got through the story, there's potentially countless hours to be had here as you perfect the genes in your monsters, play about with the habitat restoration mechanics, so you get those super rare monsters appearing with the stats that you want that are tied to the bonus skills that you get for restoring the population of monsters in certain regions. And then of course there's the Elder Dragon hunting. But like I said, I can't go into too much depth about this yet. That will be in a future video. Now the presentation of Monster Hunter Stories 3, which for me includes the graphics, the music, the performance, for me it's been fantastic. The anime style is a little bit jarring with some aspects of the story, with the serious political nature of the story. The anime and sometimes cutesy elements kind of jar a little bit, which could be disconcerting to some people, but for me, I still enjoyed it, as that cel-shaded cutesy anime style gives the game almost a timeless feel, meaning that when you go back and play it in a couple of years or whatever, it's still going to look great. The music, as with all Monster Hunter games, is what you expect of the franchise, with stirring orchestral songs to heighten and elevate emotions. It's all really beautiful at the end of the day. And even though I was given a review copy for PC, my mid-tier PC, which is a NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3060, which is a mid-range graphics card, nonetheless, it ran Monster Hunter Stories 3 really well, pretty much everything at high settings across the board. It could potentially be run at even higher settings if I wasn't using recording software. So unlike its counterpart Monster Hunter Wilds, I was pleasantly surprised with this. But overall, Monster Hunter Stories 3, it's actually a really good game. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't super hyped for Monster Hunter Stories 3, in all honesty. I did enjoy Stories 2. Stories 1 was okay, but it wasn't the game that really grabbed me. But I was blown away with Monster Hunter Stories 3. I'd recommend this to anyone who is a fan of the Monster Hunter series, or if you're a fan of turn-based creature combat games. While some aspects of the gameplay could potentially get repetitive, there is a lot to do here, potentially reaching hundreds of hours if you're able to get your teeth into the end game. But there we have it, that is my first impressions review of Monster Hunter Stories 3. Like I said, it was the first impressions, so unfortunately I haven't been able to delve deep into the end game, but playing through the game, despite not being hyped for it at first, I was glad to be proven wrong, as this has been an exceedingly enjoyable experience. But what are your thoughts? Are you interested in the game? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you my first impressions review of Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection. Hope you enjoyed it, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.